live. We're online. We're good. Everything's working. And the very first one, of course, is our resident Chaos Lord. Hi, Dad. Oh, God. You want to talk about perfect storms, folks. You want to talk about perfect storms. Oh, yeah, man. I have never in my life actually well, I say in my life, we've done, what is this, like our 10th? Not even our 10th. How many episodes are we on now?
It's like 14. It's like 14.
No way, really? Are we that high up?
Just guessing. Yeah.
Just guessing, I don't know.
Let me.
Hi, Tara. Hi, Mr. Bishop. Oh, well, okay, fine. I'll restate this. Trying to be less dramatic. Never since starting this have I ever actually considered taking a night off, but oh my lack of a God. Today did it. For the uninitiated, I have horrible cat allergies. And I made the terrible mistake of hugging and holding on to a cat today when I was visiting the kobold's mother. And oh boy, howdy. You know how they say you should always see how allergy medicine will affect you? Hi, Mom. Well, yeah. Oh boy, howdy. I am in no mood for any of this. And everything was wrong, by the way, setting this up. Literally everything. The camera, the microphone, the chair, the dogs, the alignment of the sun and the moons, everything was off kilter and wrong and needed to be readjusted in the span of like 15 minutes. And if you've ever worked in any kind of production, you realize 15 minutes is no time at all. Yeah, I don't know. This chair grew or something. Somehow, some way, this chair that never moves was moved completely wrong. And like we had to rearrange the fraggin' building. Oh, shut up, Sean. See, I'm not even in a good... I'm such a bad mood. And then, worse yet, I have picked out a topic that is just going to raise my blood pressure and tick me off more. So I just know how to do a show, don't I? We also have this bizarre mystery box that came from my mother, which I don't know what the hell it is, but she said to open it on camera, and it rattles. So I don't know if it's dice or something. I hope it's not. I hope it, whatever is in there, I hope it wasn't a single solid object, because it rattles really loud. I'm sure you can't hear me. I'm sure they can't pick this up, but whatever's in there is rattling around now, so I hope it wasn't a solid object.
Shrunken heads.
They don't... Shrunken heads don't rattle like that. We were going to do also tasting these mystery pickles that my dear sister sent. But unfortunately, some of our crew here are kind of sick. Yeah, I know. Yeah, keep that away. Unfortunately, aren't feeling well enough to try these pickles, so we're going to be doing that next week. Maybe. I mean...
You have my word.
Anyway... My sister says to bite her. Anyway. Am I Really, Mom? Am I reading this right? Bishop, you might want to go get some beads or something. Yeah, my mother is saying that it's a Dybbuk box.
Oh.
It's a what box?
No, it sounds like it's like a Jenga set or puzzles.
Either way, you know, I'm tempted to just open it now.
Open it now, yes.
Yeah, you know what, Bishop, can you bring me a knife? Hold on, folks. We're going to do some impromptu surgery here. We're going to open the box first. Because, frankly, I don't know if I'm going to have the composure and reasoning to handle cutlery. What the hell? Go away.
The broccoli's got a steam for a bit anyway.
Thank you, sir.
And that's the part where I thought of leaning down into the camera frame and saying hi, but that's when I also realized if I do that, I'd probably get stabbed in the eye.
That might not be for the best effort. Boy, howdy. All right, let's open this up now. Okay, so real quick, I was told to open this on screen during the show. My mother sent me this, and now she's in the chat. If you're not seeing it in the chat, she's in the chat saying that it's a Dybbuk box. Which, if you haven't seen our previous episodes, a Dybbuk box is something from Jewish folklore. Basically, a Dybbuk is a very specific and actually apparently very powerful kind of demon that has to be contained. You know what? Box, I will break you. You don't even know. Also, somebody wrapped this thing in a rubber band. I have no idea what's going on anymore on my own damn show. Come, watch a middle-aged, balding, fat guy wrestle with a box.
Hey.
I got one. It's good. I'm just having trouble actually getting around this because my mother has an affiliation with tape apparently now. I mean, is everyone at least entertained, Mr. Bishop? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. Mr. Bishop, you here? I thought I saw you a minute ago. Oh, don't worry, everyone. It was my sister who wrapped the box, not my mother. Just throws her right under the bus. All right, let's see this. What are you? That's just bubble wrap. Oh, good heavens. You know, real quick, I'm going to say this. There's more bubble wrap on this Dybbuk box than there is that came with the jars of pickles that my sister sent. What's this? There's a letter. I picked the worst time because I'm in such a bad mood, and this is going to be so heart-touching and then loving and stuff like that. I'm going to feel like a complete ass for being such a jerk. Warning to those who find this serial holds the evil spirit of the serial killer. It's concealed by a witch and should never be opened. Must be. I can't help but feel like this is revenge for the time that I sent my mother an actual human finger. By the way, total fact, I sent my mother a human finger as a Halloween gift. Everybody in the chat's just going to love that. Wait, it was real? Yes, Mother, it was an actually preserved human finger. It was a legally acquired cadaver finger. Don't look at me like that. Oh, that was a mistake. Alrighty, let's see here. It's got, looks like leather cord. What are these? What is this? This looks like boot leather. It's got a candle. It smells like burning. A scroll with a nail. want you to break it. Would you try here? Hold on. Well, you know, the first thing they say with any kind of magical thing is don't undo it. So here we go. We have a bent nail. Let's see here. I refuse to believe my mother actually cursed me via airmail. Then again, I did say that Wiccans were bra burners, so maybe my mother is madder at me than I realize. Okay, there's some string. Let's seal it. Do it open, stir it. Oh, that's just stir it, open the box. No, there's definitely something in here. A second warning. Oh, this might be what I smell that was burning. This paper's actually burnt. Hey, yeah, there you go. No, you're fine, you're fine.
I was going to hold it up for the camera.
I don't know if they can see it.
They can't really read it, but
one more time. Beware, do not open. Trapped inside this box is an evil spirit. Misfortune will follow those who disturb or open this box. Well, considering that I've spent the past several days shaking the hell out of this dang thing, I'm going to assume that it's too late to not disturb it. Ah, they waxed the cords that are tied around it too. I am not sure how you even would open this thing. There's something in here, though. The coach has got to be by the post. There you go. That's why the mail is always so terrible. People try and send Dybbuk boxes by mail, and next thing you know, the U.S. Postal Service is cursed. Okay, there we go. There's going to be a human finger. Well, no, I guess to top a human finger, you'd need to send like a human hand, wouldn't you? I am tempted to use the knife to cut this deck. Not only did she double knot it.
use a lighter if it's sealed.
You just want an excuse to use that dang thing, don't you?
It's a knife.
Okay.
That's what it's for.
Okay. Okay. Hold on to that for me. Thank you, useful person. I don't even see where the box opens. It's got a little Ouija board design on it. Sealed in wax, just cut. Okay, I felt something move inside here. You want to give it a shot?
Cut it open?
Yeah, I'm not sure where even the seam is.
It'd be.
Hello, Connie.
1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, let's see if I can.
Using this for that.
Okay. We are. Yes, hi, Connie. We're opening a Dybbuk box that my mother sent me. Only now do I realize I kind of hope that Riding Raven and Master of the Total Defense are not here in the chat right now to see this. Because I can only imagine how sacrilegious this is.
I'm more worried about your wonderful knife handling skills there.
You know what, given the effects of this medication and the allergies, would you like to take a shot at it, Bishop?
No. Use the butter knife. So even if you do ram through something, you just stab into your knee. There you go.
Ow. Stop mocking me. The top slides off. Well, if he wasn't mad before, it's mad now. God, what was that movie? I'm scared the boogeyman's in my closet, so the guy shoots the closet. And he's like, if there's a boogeyman in there, he's not going to be scaring anyone anymore. What was that?
I don't know.
Was that Major Payne? Well, I mean, if we weren't going to vacuum the floor before. Jiminy Christmas. You know, I don't think you have to worry about this demon getting out. Aha! Aha! I am smarter than a piece of wood. My sister is yelling at me from across time and space, apparently. Okay, let's see. Come on. Come on. What in... Open, 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 open. Okay. Well, was that as good for you? Let's see what we got in here. We have a broken tiki. We have a broken tiki. It's lost an eyebrow. Don't know if you guys can see it, but it's, yeah, this eyebrow is broken off. Let me see here. Tiki god, the Hawaiian god. This Hawaiian god was the equivalent of Zeus. He was the big daddy of them all, chief of all the male gods on Hawaii. Ku bestows vitality, strength, courage, leadership, authority, bulldog tenacity, long life, all that good stuff. Well, if that isn't just, you know, an advocation for a particular deity, all that good stuff. See what else we have here. Oh, we have a vial of graveyard soil. Always useful to have. I have a big bottle of graveyard dirt. And I also have a D20, a 20-sided dice with a grave soil in it. Let's see here. Let's see. Here we have a little styrofoam skull. Okay. Cute little thing. Let's see here. We have Mother, dear mother, you're not fraggin' funny. Have I ever mentioned to you guys in the chat how much I hate spiders? Have I? Because I'm moving stuff around in this box of bric-a-brac, and this gigantic thing. Oh.
Ooh, I want to see.
Here, you can have it.
Oh, the cobalt is interesting.
There you go. Enjoy. We got some kind of a net and a feather. Remember last week when we were talking about Gan Ning, the pirate, and he put the feathers in the turbans of his soldiers so they would be able to tell none of them died? That was a fun time. Let's see. Who are you? You look like a voodoo doll. Is that? Am I right there? Is this a voodoo doll, Mom? You got looks like a voodoo doll, wrapped in chains and nets with a bunch of pins in it. Probably shouldn't have just haphazardly grabbed it. It's got pins. Oh, my mother is just dying laughing, apparently. Let's see here. We got, oh, there you go, Bishop. This can be for you. It's a little cupcake. Covered in craft herpes.
Yep.
A glitter cupcake. Oh. Salt. Jar of salt. A classic instrument of protection. Oh, Tara, you crocheted this voodoo doll. You know, maybe we'll find a way to like hang it off the Vagrant's antlers or something. Let's see here. We got some native jewelry. What in the name of deep relay? Is this a tooth? Mother, you have explaining to do. This looks like a tooth. A big fragging tooth. What do we got here? You're just a piece of wax. A ruby ring. A little ruby ring.
I messed that up. That was my finger.
A dog's tooth. This is a dog's tooth. What dog? Hog. A hog. I thought you said. Okay, hold on a second. Here, hold on. Wait. Oh, hey, look at that. I got a pinky ring. Now I'm not only the Prince of Darkness, by the way, still the Prince of Darkness. Now I'm the Pimp of Darkness. Got a pinky ring. Let's see here. Holy water that has apparently leaked.
Maybe you shouldn't have shaken up the knock so much.
Thank you for that incredibly important insight now.
Captain Obvious away.
Now they're saying the ring is cursed. The ring is cursed. And it's a deer tooth, not a hog. Okay. Well, what else do we got in here? This looks like a bottle of hemp. I cannot tell what this is. I'm not sure what this is.
Sage, maybe?
It looks like cords or something. Let's see here. We got a feather. Another feather. Oh. Almost enough to make a whole damn bird in here. We got a black and a white feather.
Moss.
Moss. That's moss. Oh, really? You know who loves moss? Zero. The artist that made the second Vagrant mask. They love moss. They're always talking about moss. Let's see here. Ow. Looks like a dried up sunflower. I like sunflowers, actually. Yeah, there's some coins and a jawbone.
That's probably the pig.
Is this the hog thing you were talking about? Because there's a tooth and a jawbone, but this tooth looks way too big for this jaw. See, my mother is saying that they're both deer. Okay. Oh, the dried flour and the cupcake are from my niece Abby. All right. We're gonna put this all back in there for now. See, joke's on you is, you know, this is all the kind of stuff that this is all the kind of stuff that I would normally collect on my own anyway. I mean, heck, man. Little dear God. My sister's saying it's a coyote jaw. Diamond was a coyote hybrid. So I can make the argument that I had a coyote pet. And we suspected that she was like 50% coyote, as a matter of fact. We're going to close this up for now. I am covered in wax, by the way. We're going to put that down. That's a nice little box. I'm keeping the ring, by the way. I'm going to keep wearing this ring. I actually like rings. I don't own any. I think this is probably the first ring I've actually owned since my graduation, which I got.
Another ring. Don't forget about your granddad's ring.
Oh yes, my grandfather's ring. Well, that's not my ring though. Lots of awesome things involved. Seal the box back up. Yeah. No, that was really cool. I knew it was going to happen. I'm in this really bad mood. You know, we'll seal it later. Don't worry. Calm down. Okay, my mother did not send me a curse by airmail. Okay, it's just a bunch of cool, creepy stuff. Boy, howdy. Yes, Tar, I have one of Grandpa's rings. We actually, the Vagrant wears it now. And the bent nail, don't forget the bent nail. Anyway, though, I knew it when I started opening the box. I was like, I'm going to be in a bad mood. I'm mad at everybody. I'm mad at the world. Boy, howdy, this allergy stuff just did not help my mood today. Did not help anything. By the way, if you have allergies, avoid whatever triggers them because, boy, howdy, that stuff sucks. But anyway, actually, you know what? This ring might be cursed. It might be too small. It actually kind of hurts. This is a really tiny ring, too. Look at this. Look how small this is. Yeah. No, it actually kind of hurt. Anyway. Yes, next week we'll check back next week when we discuss how the haunting is going. How good or bad this spirit is.
As you can see, the haunting has progressed quite well. Stuff has fallen off the shelf several times. Covers keep opening and slamming by themselves.
Yeah, no, you should totally make more of those and like sell them. Wedding proposal. No, Sean. Silence, Sean. We have ancient alien memes on standby, so don't you dare start messing with me because I'm in a bad enough mood. I'll order the bishop to fire. No, we're not. I am not engaged to anyone.
Well, you put the ring on, you're engaged to a ghost now.
No. Absolutely not. Not engaged, no. My mother did not actually send me a freaking demon in the mail. This chair feels like it's broken and grown at the same time somehow, by the way. Be silent, Sean. What were we talking about? All right, I'm in a bad mood. So, of course, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about something that generally ticks me the heck off, of course. Because what else do you talk about when you're already in a bad mood? Tonight we're going to be talking about a pair of incredibly famous writers. Two very big inspirations for me. We kind of got sidetracked with the my own personal Dybbuk box. Well, of course, yeah, yes, Mother. If you had an Etsy store, of course I'd mention you. What kind of son doesn't mention? No, Tara, I do not have PMS, bitch. I'm suffering from really bad allergies, and then taking like 2 different kind of allergy medicines at the same time, hoping for a stronger effect. Anyway, boy howdy. Tonight we're going to be talking. I don't want to lose any of that, actually. Tonight we're going to be discussing the famous authors Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, you said that already. Anyway, boy. You know, why couldn't you have sent this like a few weeks ago? Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago we were talking about the Dybbuk box, didn't we? That was Cursed Objects, I think. Yeah, that's where I sang the Hearst song. Shut up, Sean. Anyway, people are listening to this and they can't see the chat, or they're going to watch this back later and not see the chat, and nothing is going to make any goddamn sense. Where did you come from? You know what? No, you stay up there. If you're there on the couch, you can't frickin' jump at me all the damn time. You know, in hindsight, hiring a chupacabra to do anything on my show, not a good idea. Started making it the next day. Well, no, that's actually really cool, yeah. I mean, if you could make those on the cheap, absolutely. Anyway, though. So, we're going to start with this, and once again, I have notes so big I have to close out the chat so I can't watch you people. But anyway, so a big reason that I actually decided to do this topic is, one, I didn't know what else to talk about, and two, we actually found this book at a local thrift store. By the way, always check your thrift stores. The entire collection of Edgar Allan Poe, and so I decided I would just talk about that. Everyone's giving my mother advice about selling stuff on Etsy. It's adorable. Anyway, though, and later tonight we're going to read 1 or 2 of Master Poe's writings. I love you too, Mom. And we're going to talk about Lovecraft first, mainly because of the fact I just rip the Band-Aid off and get my blood pressure really high, right? Master Lovecraft is probably one of the most controversial writers in American history, especially more recently. And I'm going to try really hard to not be rude or distasteful in discussing this, but basically, he was actually born in 1890. I didn't know that he was that old, actually. The fact of the matter is, whether you love him or hate him and his political philosophies or things that he said back when he was like 8 years old, that's what everyone gets so mad about, is when he was a kid anyway. It's so stupid. Whether you love him or not, he was a major inspirational force for probably 75% of all horror and sci-fi, even modern stuff today. Even stuff that's not really horror still takes a lot of P's and Q's from him. Stylization, setting, things like that. And like I said, he's very controversial. I think it's ironic and kind of funny. He's so controversial. Like, everyone everyone loves to sit there and make the joke, hey, what was Lovecraft's cat's name? For the uninitiated, he named his cat after a certain racial slur that in the 1920s and 30s, and even still today, is sometimes also referred to, used to refer to someone as being a dumbass. But it's funny, because every time I hear someone say that, I always say, okay, can you name his other 2 cats? He had 3. He had 3 at the time that he had that cat that everybody knows. And it's funny, because people get mad. I actually got in trouble on Facebook. This was a while ago, back when I even bothered to go down to Facebook at all. There was someone trying to make jokes like that, and I asked him straight up, it's like, okay, you know one of his cats, what about the other 2? And that's how I got kicked out of that Facebook group. I do that a lot. I'm kind of glad that they don't really have groups and stuff like that on like other platforms, because like I would just be kicked off of everything at left, right, and center. Uh-oh, we have a problem already. Oh, Miss Raven, hello! Boy, howdy, did you have perfect timing? Hello, Miss Raven. Everyone, Writing Raven is part of Gothic Therapy. Wonderful friend of the channel. Very wonderful writer. Glad you made it. Name all 3. Oh, you want me to name all 3 of Lovecraft's cats? Okay, so there's the one that everybody knows, and I can't say it here, but in context, it's a racial slur that, yes, is specifically towards African Americans. However, if I can play devil's advocate for a second, it also is used in reference to a dumbass. So essentially, he named his cat Dumbass. Sean, you're thinking of The Color Out of Space. Which, by the way, the book is a lot better. It's a cool movie in itself. I just kind of feel that, like, I wish they had... It's like the Godzilla effect. Remember the 1990s Godzilla movie that was, like, not Godzilla at all? It was a good movie. I just wish that they had taken the time, you know, to just give it a different title. That's kind of how it was with Nicolas Cage's The Color Out of Space. It was very similar to The Color, but if you read The Color Out of Space and then you watched that movie, you'd be very confused and personally disappointed. No, Sean. So actually, we'll get into... Sean actually brings up a good point about Lovecraft's father. Lovecraft... I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off here. First and foremost, real quick, one of the greatest writers in the history of all mankind doesn't need little me protecting him, but I'm going to speak out because a lot of people unfairly dogpile on him. And it's funny because, again, most people don't know jack and or squat about him. And Jack just left town. Anyway, Lovecraft was a very complicated person because I think deep down he was also a very hurt person. His father ended up being committed to a mental asylum when he was roughly, I want to say, 4 or 5 years old. He had a, what was officially documented as a nervous disorder. And shortly after that, he died under the care of the hospital. From there, his mother moved to New England to live with her father, Burren Phelps, who was Lovecraft's grandfather. Now, it's funny because supposedly his grandfather was the one who gave him his love for literature in general, writing and reading. However, apparently he was also kind of on the cruel side. In fact, Lovecraft even commented that the villain, Old Whiteley, I think is how you pronounce that name. I've never heard it said out loud. Whiteley, the villainous sorcerer from the Dunwich Horror, was basically based off his grandfather. I'd like to point out that that character is considered to be one of the most evil humans in the Lovecraftian mythos. So that might give us a bit of a hint at what kind of man this Burren Phelps was, at least to Lovecraft. And that was just the start of his problems. For the record, HP stands for Howard Phillips. Howard had a very hard time in school. He would get in trouble a lot, actually, because and here's the thing that ticks me off. He'd get in trouble because he wouldn't want to play with the other children. He would want to either stay in the classroom during recess and read a book or try to talk to teachers. Apparently he actually got in trouble, and they actually disciplined him one time because he actually was trying to sneak into the teacher's lounge. And you all know what I mean when I say discipline him. They beat him. They supposedly actually beat him for trying to go into a teacher's lounge. And people wonder why this guy was in such a bad mood all the time. Seriously. Anyway, though, his adult life wasn't any better. He lived in the Northeast in the 1920s, early 1930s. Real quick, students, anyone know what else was going on at the time in the world? Massive immigration. A lot of people were fleeing Europe because of, one, there was the aftershocks of World War I, and two, you had the rise of certain political factions in countries like Germany and Italy. He literally had to shove and push and get shoved and pushed just to get into the office to talk with an editor to try and sell some of his stories to a magazine, you know. And I'm just going to ask a question real quick to the chat. Because everyone loves to look down on Lovecraft for being, oh, he was xenophobic and he was a bigot and all this stuff. How many times would you get punched in the face trying to get into work before you started to feel resentment towards the people that were punching you? You know what I mean? It's like, seriously. And I knew I was going to do this. I knew I was going to get mad. And here we go. Kristoff's going on a rant here. You know, people are sure goddamn comfortable looking back at the 1920s and passing judgment on people who lived in that time. And don't give me that roaring 20s, everyone was rich bullshit. That's not how it was. Okay? Outside of Hollywood and Washington, D.C., everybody was poor. Okay? The 20s is what created the Depression of the 30s and 40s. The fact of the matter is, before you decide to sit here and piss on the grave of a man, you know, why don't you try living in a two-room studio? It had a living room and a bedroom. Live in that with your insane mother and tell me how your attitude is. And by the way, we're going to get into that because holy cow. Anyway, though, as I was saying, even with all this going on around him, he was able to write dozens upon dozens upon dozens of stories, most of which were published through various, we today call them pulp fiction magazines. And he was actually very smart, because what he would do is he would take, and he'd write one big story, almost kind of like what do we call them today, novelettes?
Novellas.
Novella, thank you, novella. He'd write basically novellas, and then he'd chop them up. And he'd sell part one to a magazine. And he'd make it very clear that was part one. Well, if they get the first one, they have to get the others, right? And so he would ensure that, you know, he at least had something that he could sell every month to make rent. I mean, the Call of Cthulhu is like 27 parts, I think? Without looking, I think it's like 27 parts. That's 2 years. That's 2 years worth of selling these stories. And it's funny, too, because everyone makes jokes about, well, his writing and, like, you know, how do you pronounce Relay? How do you pronounce Cthulhu and Shub-Nagrath and stuff like that? He actually did an interview with his editor about these weird names. And he gave probably one of the greatest angry, mean-spirited responses I've ever heard. Because apparently this was around the time he was publishing The Call of Cthulhu. And his editor's like, well, how do you pronounce Cthulhu? And Lovecraft's actual response, he had this written down. You have to remember that the name is not meant to be spoken by a human tongue. So, in order to pronounce the name correctly, you must first fold your tongue over in your mouth and swallow it. I'm sorry. I am in awe. And keep in mind, he said this to basically his boss. He said this to the editor who was in charge of deciding whether or not his story got bought, so he'd have freaking rent money that month. The gonads on this man. Go swallow your tongue if you're offended by the weird names. I love that. Oh, that's one of my favorite Lovecraftian quotes. But anyway, and I was kind of getting into earlier. Everyone knows about Lovecraft when he was young. People talk about, certain poems that he wrote when he was a child, or his earlier works, or comments that he made when he was younger. It's funny, almost no one ever quotes him in his later years, which I find very disingenuous because he actually came to be very regretful for how he behaved. He actually... my favorite all-time Lovecraftian quote, in fact, and it's funny because I say this quote and people are like, wait, that's a Lovecraft quote? Yes, it is. I quote, "It's hard to have done all of one's growing up since 33, but it's a damn sight better than not growing up at all." Lovecraft, around the age of 30, which is sadly he didn't have much longer to live after that, but he actually came to say that he was very regretful for a lot of things he wrote, a lot of things he said. And a lot of people claim that the big thing that shifted his worldviews was actually his friendship to Frank Long, who some people jokingly say was his apprentice. Frank Long was the son, I want to say the son of immigrants, or maybe the grandson. Either way, they met by accident at a train station, actually. Supposedly, they met when Frank dropped a bunch of paintings he had. And Lovecraft was just standing there, so he helped the boy pick them up. For the record, he was like twice Frank's age when they met. He was like about 30, maybe a little bit less than 30. And Frank was just out of high school. He was like 18, I want to say. But anyway, and Lovecraft saw the paintings and asked him if he had done them, and Frank said, well, yeah. And from there, they just started talking, and it's funny. Lovecraft is supposedly this cold, angry, unfriendly person, but he loved Frank's paintings. Frank himself was a fan of historical and traditional Italian and European artworks, so he tried to mirror that. And that's kind of what opened the door and made Lovecraft take notice of him. A lot of the stuff we know about Lovecraft in his later life comes from Frank, actually. Frank himself claimed that each of them had written over 1,000 letters to each other, and some of them were over 80 pages long. These two were always in contact. They were always very much sharing thoughts and collaborating together. There's even ghost stories that the two of them were working on a novel, which would have been really cool. But one of the big things that we learned from Frank was about Lovecraft's mother. She was... I've heard a lot of people try to defend her. She was schizophrenic. She was depressed. Whatever it was that was driving her, she did pretty horrible things to Howard. Frank admitted that Lovecraft had confided in him saying that she would beat him. Specifically, she liked to beat him with wooden utensils. Worse yet, Lovecraft one time even acknowledged that he was afraid to go back home to his apartment with her because sometimes she would, and I quote, make him sleep in bed with her like a man. Now, supposedly Frank tried to get him to explain more, like, well, what do you mean by that? But Lovecraft wouldn't go into further detail. He didn't want to talk about it. And this is one of the reasons that for actually very long stretches of time, Howard would actually basically hide at the Long family's property on vacations, claiming that he was going with them across the country. Like, they would literally just hide this man in their home from his mother because she may have very well sexually assaulted him. And there's no other way to say it. But anyway, and like I said, it annoys me because people know so much about Lovecraft. You know, they love to talk about him and they love to say all these things about him. And it's like they know nothing about him. They know one of the names of his cats. You know what I mean? It's like this man lived such a painful, hard life that frankly, all of us here are goddamn lucky we couldn't even begin to understand it. You know? Meanwhile, at the same time they do this, they enjoy the creations that he suffered to make. You know? Supposedly he would actually try to induce sleepwalking and nightmares to get story ideas. He claimed, what was it called? The Nartholotep, I believe is the one he claimed he actually wrote while sleepwalking. He literally supposedly woke up at his writing desk just scribbling down the notes. So he took it, cleaned it up a little bit, and yeah, that was the Nartholotep, I think is how you pronounce it. Look, I can't swallow my tongue, so I can't correctly pronounce it in the first place. Just give me a break. It's funny too, because again, everyone knows him. He was such a bigot. He hated foreigners so much. He actually was very vocal against the U.S. government for turning people away when they were trying to come over from Europe near the end of his life in the late 1930s. By the way, folks, what was happening in the late 1930s in Europe? Anyone want to say it? Probably not. Yeah, it was the rise of the Italian Fascist Party and the Socialized Labor Party of Germany, and we all know what that became. I've heard some people theorize, actually, that he saw those things happening in Europe, and that kind of scared him straight, so to speak. He saw how dangerous, nationalism and foreign opposition could become. And he changed his tune. He was actually very loud about that. He advocated for asylum seekers and stuff like that in the end of his life. Sadly, he wasn't long for the world. He died in 1937 of a respiratory problem, which in itself actually gave rise to some scary stories. As a child, he had problems with asthma. This is true. But as a grown man, he seemed to kind of grow out of it. He never needed any kind of help or anything like that. It was just suddenly, one night, he died laying on the couch in his apartment. Some people claim that he was actually murdered. Some people say his mother did it, like she smothered him with a pillow. Other people say that he was killed because his stories were too close to the truth. I don't know. We know that, yeah, he died at the age of, I want to say he was, let's see here, 1980, so he'd be 47 Yeah, 1980 to 1890 to 1937 would be, yeah, he'd be 47 years old, roughly. But anyway, the official reason that he had died was that he had some kind of respiratory problem. He couldn't breathe. He suffocated. There's weird stories about why and how it happened. His mother actually burned a lot of his writings after he died. I think it was his mother. I'm pretty sure it was his mother. And Frank Long actually commented how, I actually have the quote. Most people didn't know him. They didn't know the real him. They knew this professional persona that he projected. He was terrified of people not taking him seriously. And so, even though supposedly behind closed doors, he was this very sarcastic, very clever-witted person who was very funny. And supposedly he even wrote comedy. He wrote comedy, but he never published any of those stories because he was afraid of not being taken seriously. Let me see here. Hold on. I know I have it somewhere. I know I have, because Frank Long actually said a quote. I know I have it somewhere around here in these notes. Here it is. Okay. He claimed that Howard was a soul so dark the world refused to take the chance to get to know it. And the world was worse off for that. That was Frank's opinion of the late master. Tragically, a lot of his work was lost because of his mother. But Frank and a bunch of other people who were friends with Lovecraft started Arkham Publishing, which was this little printing press thing, basically just to preserve his work. Because he never published a book. He only wrote in these magazines, and back then people didn't save those things. So once that magazine was out the door and sold, that was basically it. And Frank carried the torch and was kind of the banner bearer for Arkham Publishing and collecting anything that Lovecraft wrote and re-releasing it in publications and so on. But yeah, huge inspiration to me personally. It's kind of funny, actually. The whole reason I even started trying to write horror was because of the fact I just was trying to mirror and mimic him. I'm not even joking. Like, literally, there were some of my earlier writings were just trying to write like he did. He had a very unique writing style too. He had a few rules to write by. The first one was never explain anything. Don't explain anything. Assume that your readers are smart enough that they don't need to be given an explanation, that they can figure things out for themselves. And if they're not smart enough to figure things out and follow along with your story, well, then just leave them behind. That was his mentality. His second rule was to never speak plainly. If you could use a big 3-4 syllable word and you could drag out a sentence, then speak that way, especially if you're doing horror. It should be pointed out that that may have partially been because he also got paid by the page, so you want to stretch that out there so you can afford to pay your rent, right? I keep saying people look down on him as being some dumb throwback, hick. And it's like, no, he was a very intelligent man. He just had such a horrible life that he kind of pushed it out onto the world, And again, it annoys me because it's like nobody who wants to talk about Lovecraft knows anything about him when, in the later stages of his life. when he actually denounced many of the very topics that he advocated for when he was younger. But yeah, let's see how the chat's. I'm sure that everyone in the chat is being respectful and polite and kind, and I'm not going to at all be. People will look down on the past cultures. Still the same. Actually, okay, I'll give you that one, Sean. Writing Ribbon, you didn't know? Yeah, that's one of the reasons that this topic actually upsets me so much. Is people, they love to talk about, what was his cat's name? What was his cat's name? Okay, did you know that his mother beat him, even when he was a grown-ass man? Do you know that he had to hide for months at a time at his friend's home because he was literally afraid to go and face her because she may have very well been molesting him? And Sean is absolutely right on this. People, it's easy to look at the past and look down on it because, well, I'm modern. Like, you ain't learned jack, okay? Never more. Yeah, we're gonna get to those. Don't worry. Don't worry, Miss Raven. We will. Oh, hi, Cobalt. He's actually on the computer. But yeah, it's like I said, it's, I love the works of Master Lovecraft. I call him Master because the fact that, well, spoiler warning, I never met him. He actually died, Jiminy Christmas, a long time before I was even born. But the fact of the matter is, I owe my entire mythos to him. My whole channel literally was because I read The Nameless City, and I said, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I write a weird story? So I gave it a shot. And it's just been going on and on from there. But yeah, that's Master Lovecraft. Spoiler warning for the people who are new here. He is not going to be a stranger. I refuse to apologize for a brilliant man, a man who I owe my career to in a way. Yeah, I'm absolutely not going to shirk away from commenting or mentioning him in the future. It's funny, he himself didn't like to cross-reference. There's a few other writers he would reference. He mentioned a couple times Robert Chambers' character Hastur, as well as Frank Long, because they worked together. But he actually found it kind of disrespectful in a weird way. He didn't like referencing directly other people's stuff. And kind of in keeping in that spirit of Lovecraft video game, Lovecraft's Untold Stories. I have not heard of that, but I'll look into it. Right now, I'm actually trying to hunt down a copy of Cthulhu Wars, the board game. It's kind of funny, there's so many games and stuff, and he actually didn't like games. He himself thought that they were a waste of time and brain function. He actually thought, games could make you dumber. So he didn't like games personally. But I love everything that has to do with him. And no, I don't agree with everything he ever said. How he said it himself. He had a lot of growing up to do. Tragically, he only did it, in the last 10 or so years of his life. But better than never, Oh, and real quick, I don't know them off the top of my head, but in case you're wondering, I believe one of his cats was called Snowfall. And I don't remember the other one, but I know I'm like 75% sure one was Snowfall. It was a white cat. But anyway, that is Master Lovecraft. We'll be talking about him in the future, I'm absolutely certain. But we have another guest, of course, the great Edgar Allan Poe. And it's kind of funny, because everyone compares Lovecraft and Poe together. Um, it's funny though, yeah, like I said, Poe and Lovecraft were kind of opposites in a lot of ways. Even though they're always paired together, but they love to pair in pop culture, they love to put Lovecraft and Poe together. I think it's because Lovecraft was kind of a nihilist and Poe was such a cynic. You know, they both had that kind of bad attitude. What's this? Oh, Sean, you're thinking of the Call of Cthulhu living card game, which I still have most of those cards. That's another fun game. But anyway, Poe, it's funny because Lovecraft, all he wanted to do was be a writer. That's it. He just wanted to write his little weird stories. Edgar Allan Poe, he was much more of a Renaissance man. He was involved in anything to do with writing. In fact, hold on here. Yeah, he was, in no particular order, a poet, an editor, a writer, a critic, and supposedly he even was a tutor, an English tutor briefly. Yeah, he was involved in anything that had to do with writing. He did it at some point or another. And what is similar to Lovecraft is he had a troubled life as well. Both his parents died when he was very young. He was actually unofficially adopted, according to the various sources I found, by the Allan family, which is where he gets his middle name from. He was born just Edgar Poe. But when he was taken in by the Allan family, he took up that, and so he called himself Edgar Allan Poe. Unfortunately, he did not have a very good relationship with them. The father, John Allan, and him constantly butted heads. That's kind of something that seemed to follow Edgar around. He was always getting in trouble with authority in some form or fashion. And by the way, Miss Raven, while you're here, if I step out of line and I say something wrong, please don't hesitate to correct me. I'm going off of just literally reading over a bio, so if I'm wrong about something, but no, he had problems all through his life. He originally went briefly to the University of Virginia, which, by the way, disclaimer, stay out of West Virginia. It is cursed. I haven't mentioned that in a while on the show, actually, now that I think about it. I feel like we gotta make up for lost ground making fun of West Virginia. We always talk trash about West Virginia because, like, every cryptid ever was seen there. But anyway, he attended the University of Virginia for one single year, and he had to drop out because his funding was gone. And basically, he came back and had a big confrontation with John Allan. He claimed that John withdrew his funds, so he couldn't go to college. John turned it around and accused Edgar of gambling his college fund away, which is another thing. You know, I'm kind of surprised that they don't have a musical about Mr. Poe's life. And yeah, we'll get to that mysterious death stuff here in a minute. But anyway, he was always hounded by horrible claims and accusations and rumors about him doing bad things. Personally, there's no proof of any of it, by the way. I want to put that out there. People love to sit here and say, oh, he was addicted to what is it, the painkiller? Morphine? Morphine, thank you. He was supposedly addicted to morphine. He was a heavy gambler. He was a heavy alcoholic. He did all this, that, and the other. And it kind of always seems like it stemmed from the fact he was always getting into fights. He was always challenging people. Again, we know him for his poetry. We know him for his poems. Of course, obviously, The Raven lives in infamy. My personal favorite is The Conqueror Worm. And there's a bit of a funny story behind that one, actually. But anyway, he always had trouble with authority, which is kind of funny because that's, again, the opposite of Lovecraft. Lovecraft wanted to hang out with teachers and didn't like students and stuff like that, and he got in trouble. Poe couldn't seem to stop ticking off authorities like his teachers and his adopted parents and so on. But anyway, after the whole thing with his college fund, Edgar and the Allans kind of drifted apart and became very uncomfortable. Allan actually joined the army briefly. And then John's wife, Frances, the woman who took him in, she passed away very suddenly. And so Edgar tried to extend an olive branch and bury the hatchet with John. And at first it was good, but it ended up fizzling out really bad. The big problem was basically, guess what? Mr. Allan, it was Poe. Poe actually got court-martialed. Apparently he had tried to get a transfer from where he was stationed to West Point. It didn't go well. He ended up getting court-martialed, and he was dishonorably discharged from the army, which ended up driving a big wedge between him and John. And after that, they parted ways, and I always think it's kind of funny. Apparently he left that family with really bad terms. He was a grown man by then, but he never spoke. Supposedly after the West Point incident, he never spoke to the Allan family again. But yet he kept their name. And I've always kind of wondered about that. It's like, what happened there? Because, I mean, if he came to hate John Allan so much, why would he keep the man's name? You know what I mean? It's like, I always feel like there's something we don't know that happened between Edgar and John. Maybe he kept it because of Frances, the mother. I don't know. Hold on a second. Opium, yeah, that's another thing they accuse him of being addicted to. You imagine? Yes, Sean said, I guess he was a scrappy poet. Supposedly, he got in lots of fights. He was not it's funny, we always picture him in the suit and, very, very gentlemanly and posh and stuff like that. Supposedly, he had no problem at all shoving people and getting into fights. He was not a pushover. He was not a timid man at all. He was very brave, very bold. He'll tell you exactly what he thinks of you and your stuff. Supposedly, that's actually what led into his mysterious death. This is something I actually was surprised to find out. When I was looking over his biography, apparently on record, there's no confirmation of what exactly killed him. He was found on the streets of Baltimore, Maryland, by a man named Joseph Walker, and supposedly he was in such a state that he could only barely muddle out that he needed help. And so Walker got him to a hospital, but even there he was still barely able to talk. He had a fever, he was confused, and unfortunately, he passed away. And the official explanation was that he had swelling of the brain, which is, children, rabies. They claimed that rabies killed him. But that was later denounced or discredited. It was discredited, and today we don't know what actually happened to him. There's a million different stories. Some people say that he was beaten up and fatally injured by loan sharks, because he was such a gambler supposedly. Other people say that he had tried to kill himself by drinking himself to death. Other people say that he was mugged. The one that I've heard the most commonly, the conspiracy theory, and this is like tinfoil hats time, kids. Supposedly, he was actually ordered to be murdered. He was attacked and assaulted by thugs who were acting under the orders of the mayor of Baltimore. because he had been writing critiques about the Maryland electoral system. Something to do with what they called cooping, which is basically forcing people to vote, even though they don't want to. Supposedly, yes. And again, keep in mind, he had this horrible problem with authority. Kind of curious what... Hold on, this raising. You know, the previous seasons of Doctor Who would be really cool to see Poe. I would have liked to see Edgar Allan Poe in Doctor Who too, but more past seasons, not the current stuff. Oh, please, and also please don't bring up the BBC Frankenstein, please. But anyway, yeah, he lives in infamy, and like I said, it's weird because so many people love him, and I guess maybe that's kind of the silver lining is so many people, they look at the works of Poe, and again, he was supposedly he was really mean-spirited and cynical, and what's the expression? He was hard to love, supposedly. Of course, to be fair, the same people who say that are the ones who also say he was a gambler, he was an alcoholic, he was a drug addict, he was all these bad things. There was one I even read. People claim that he was briefly married to his 13-year-old cousin. I want to point out I didn't see anything that was confirmed. I saw that was a rumor, a story they spread about him. There's also a take on them. I have not seen a film adaptation of The Raven. I remember that The Simpsons did a version of it with one of the Treehouse of Horrors. Which, by the way, those were actually really cool once upon a time. Just like The Doctor. Anyway, though. But yeah, as I was saying before, it's in spite of all these nasty rumors that have cropped up about him being supposedly this horrible person, there is just generation after generation that were inspired by him, that love his work. It's funny, most of his stories are about people dying. Let's be frank about this. This book here that I'm holding in my hand, it's a book about death. And yet somehow he made it, mysterious and exciting and fun. A lot of people even argue that in a weird way, Edgar Allan Poe kind of created the suspense story in America. Some people refer to him as the father of mystery, even. Which is another thing he has in common with H.P. Lovecraft, because people, before social media, called H.P. Lovecraft the father of science fiction. Vincent Price, yes, he did The House of Usher, didn't he? And he said that was like his favorite production, I think. I'm sure Miss Raven will be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, I think The House of Usher. Yeah, that was a Poe story, wasn't it? The House of Usher? See, I gotta be careful because, usually in my show, I'm the only expert, and I have someone who knows way more than me about this in the chat. And I'm pretty sure if my mother will send me a curse box over the mail, I'm sure she'll do something to me too. I've never gotten to actually see The House of Usher with Vincent Price. I keep saying I want to see it. Elvira actually did a tribute parody of it with, what was it? I think it was Elvira's Haunted Hills was her tribute to Vincent Price. It was basically The House of Usher told with Elvira, which has one of the greatest musical comedy numbers I've ever seen. I still laugh my butt off at that movie. I understand that it can be hard to separate the art and the artist, but Uh, yeah, Tara, that's yeah. A lot of the things that we know about him, you know, oh, he was an alcoholic. I've said it before. Yeah, it's kind of funny. A lot of the worst stories about him. Oh, he married his 13-year-old cousin. He was a drinker. He was a gambler. All this stuff. A lot of these stories crop up after he was dead. You know, and my personal opinion, and again, spoiler warning, I never met Master Poe either. I never met Lovecraft or Poe. But, you know, he had a reputation for ticking off people in power. He had a knack for angering, you know, his bosses and, you know, his commanders and stuff like that. And then they say, you know, he was all these bad things. That sounds more like they were trying to discredit him. Maybe because he was a bit too close to the truth, you know? I'm just saying, a lot of effort was put in after he was dead to make you think that Edgar Allan Poe was a horrible person. And in spite of that, in spite of their best efforts, I mean, they tried to claim he died from rabies, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? Who dies from rabies? That's an animal's disease. I mean, I'm sorry, I maybe I'm being too poetic myself, but I mean, doesn't that just sound like an elaborate way to say that he died like an animal? You know? In 2020, what do I recommend? I vaguely remember hearing something about that. Was that yeah, it was a movie where Poe is actually helping hunt down a killer. I vaguely recall hearing about that. Masquerade of the Red Death is another fun one. Miss Raven is like just responding to everyone else's comments, and I just happened to see she mentions you should totally watch The House of Usher because you get to see someone cut in half with a pendulum. I mean, if that's not a you know, an advocation, I don't know what is. Like, I know humans can get rabies too, but you don't hear that much about humans getting rabies. I'm saying I think it's coincidental that they claimed, you know, these people who didn't like him claim he died from a disease that if you were just here, so-and-so has rabies, you would think that's an animal's disease. Animals get rabies, you know? So I wonder if it was, you know, yet another example of them trying to throw mud in Poe's eye. That's kind of the funny thing, huh? Poe was hated by people in his own time, and now he's beloved. And he deserves it, by the way. I want to point that out. He absolutely deserves it. He's a phenomenal writer. A lot of great, talented people owe their careers to him in a way, much like I owe mine to Lovecraft. But in the case of Lovecraft, it's the opposite. People in his time loved him. And today you have a bunch of jagoffs, you know, who read one comment on Reddit once and suddenly they're an expert. You know, we're all... You know, Mr. Bishop, you just have such a way of saying such lovely things. Actually, Miss Raven, you could help me out here. There's a particular story by Poe. I love it. It's about these two guys. They get like trapped in, I want to say, in a bear trap or something. But they're from rival families, and so they have to like sit there wanting to kill each other while they're trapped in I think it's a bear trap or a snare or something like that. And they figure out through talking to each other that actually someone else has been pitting their families against one another. And they say that they're going to unite their families. And then a bunch of wolves show up and kill them. Was that the interloper? The interlopers? What story was that, Miss Raven? Or am I thinking of somebody else? Is that a Poe? See, now I'm just like waiting for her to say something, and I'm just in horror that like that is a Poe story, right? I'm not going to offend her. Can you hear us? Are we back?
We are back.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, we had some technical difficulties. I kind of knew I should. It's funny because I actually thought that. It's like, just be sure we should change the batteries in the microphone before we start.
I thought it too, but I didn't mention it.
I was kind of hoping we could get just by, Sorry about that, everybody. Oh, what a... You're not where I thought you were anymore, Choopy. Choopy, the Chupacabra, everybody. Our wonderful technician. Anyway. So we're back. Now they're saying no sound. Really, guys? Come on. I know there's a delay. Anyway, though. Yeah. That's what happened. We opened the Dybbuk box and our batteries died. Oh, yes, Miss Raven. Choopy the Chupacabra just loves to pounce at me. Pretty much every episode. He's supposed to be handling our software and equipment and stuff like that, helping the bishop over in the corner. Mm-hmm. But anyway. Okay, so I promised we were going to read a couple of Poe's works. I'm going to explain something first here. The Conqueror Worm is very special in our household. So, back when I played D&D, I found this little side adventure thing that was based off the works of Edgar Allan Poe, with a big emphasis on the Conqueror Worm. And several of the players at my table, because I was DMing, they were unfamiliar with the works of Poe, by large, especially with the Conqueror Worm. And one of my players in particular was just so disturbed. I honestly thought he was going to go into convulsions. The Energizer battery stopped. Yeah, but we got it fixed. It's okay now. But anyway, my one player... Yeah, we're going to be doing a couple bedtime stories with Poe. But real quick, anyway. And what's funny is the Conqueror Worm is actually one of Poe's more commonly known or referenced things. There's several video games where they have boss fights that are the Conqueror Worm. Probably the coolest depiction I've seen is, what is it, Source of Madness, I think is the game? Yeah, that's Source of Madness, right? Oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We haven't lost anything? We're good?
No, my foot slipped and I hit the power.
Oh, okay. I was scared that you knocked something over.
I was scared too. Yeah, Source of Madness.
Yeah, Source of Madness has the Conqueror Worm.
The game?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, and I actually like it. I'm kind of glad that it's also one of his shorter pieces. Hold on here. Miss Raven is literally writing out the Raven. Yes, of course. I'm scared to read the Raven because that is a very rhymey poem. But I'm going to try and do justice to the Conqueror Worm. Real quick, Miss Raven. Nope, she's in complete write mode. She is trying to write the whole poem. I was going to ask her what does she think of the Conqueror Worm? Is it one that she likes? She might not be able to hear me. She might be in a trance right now. But I'm going to try and do this justice. I got a visual. Oh, yeah, babe. Alrighty. This is the Conqueror Worm. Lo, 'tis a gala night, within the lonesome later years, an angel throng bewinged, bedighted, in veils and drowned in tears, sit in a theater to see a play of hope and fears. While the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres, mimes, in the form of God on high, mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly. Mere puppets they, who come and go at bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings invisible woe. That motley drama, oh be sure, it shall not be forgot, with its phantomed, chased forevermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth in to the self-same spot, and much of madness, and more of sin and horror, that soul of the plot. But see, amid the mimic rout, a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that writhes from out the scenic solitude. It writhes, with mortal pangs. The mimes become its food, the seraphs sob at vermin fangs, in human gore imbued. Out are the lights, out all, and over each quavering form the curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of a storm, while the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy man, and its hero, the conqueror worm. But that is the conqueror worm. And it's one of my favorites. Yeah, it's a story about grave worms and the inevitability of death. And it doesn't matter if you're a clown. It doesn't matter if people think you're a god. At the end of the day, everyone rots in their grave, you know? So it's one of those things. It is beautiful. I completely agree. It's one of those stories, you know, I think maybe the world would be a better place if people kind of took a pause and thought about that for a second, you know? I mean, there's nothing wrong with being proud of yourself. There's nothing wrong with, you know, liking yourself. But, you know, at the end of the day, you're taking pride in worm food to be. So maybe you should be a little bit humble. I knew it. I knew it would be your dad. You know, I have to say, your dad, Mr. Bishop, is a bit of a darker soul, isn't he? He's kind of mean. I like you. I like you, Mr. Bishop. Now I'm scared, but I feel like if I didn't read this one, they'd be mad at me. I need to find it. I'm kind of surprised it's not like the very first one. Trying to find it. Trying to find where in the table of context is the raven. Ah, here it is. I found it. 68. Oh, past it. Hold on. I feel bad. It was literally just a couple pages past the Conqueror Worm. Holy cow. That is a long one. I did not know that the Baltimore Ravens mascot is named Poe. See, I always thought that the Ravens team was named in reference to Poe, because he's kind of a big deal there, even though he lived all over the northeastern corner. I want to say, because he kept. Supposedly, it's because he couldn't keep a job, and so he had to keep moving around to get different jobs writing. I've heard other people say that no, it was just because he did multiple jobs for different magazines and newspapers at the same time, so he had to go over to different places. If there's ever a chance to say something mean about Poe, they will. They, you know what I mean? Wow, holy cow. I'm actually kind of intimidated by this. This is like 3 pages. But he was buried in Baltimore, was he? I know they have like this big monument to him there. You've been to his grave. Did you ever hear, Miss Raven, did you ever hear the ghost story about the mysterious stranger who would go and like leave wine at Edgar Allan Poe's cemetery grave? I've heard some people say that like for a long time there was this mysterious person who would go to Edgar Allan Poe's grave and like drink a toast of wine and then just leave, and nobody knew who this person was. I remember hearing that. His grave may have been moved to Baltimore. I don't understand that. I don't understand moving graves. It's like, you don't know. That just seems like a hassle. I get putting a monument. Yeah, I want to say Aurelio Voltaire did a song called the Cemetery Picnic that was supposed to be about that. Or it may have been the Graveyard Picnic. Either way, I think he that song was supposed to be about Edgar Allan Poe's mysterious visitor who would go every year and drink wine over his grave. Sounds about right for Poe too, doesn't it? Like if I were to tell you any person had a mysterious visitor who would show up every year in the middle of the night and just drink a toast of wine, it would be Poe. You would guess Poe, wouldn't you? He sounds like the guy who would have that. And yes, Bishop, I know I'm stalling. This is like a 3-page poem.
I was laughing because I thought of the goth kids from South Park.
We were having a good time. We were all having a good time. Actually, you know, I like South Park. I'm not a fan of the goth kids, though. All right. I'm going to try very hard to read this poem. Well, of course I gotta read the whole thing. I can't just read a paragraph of it. By the way, I do appreciate that he did paragraph it. It is written in paragraphs. It's separated. You know what's funny? The first time I ever heard the Raven read out loud, it was actually Gomez Adams, the original actor. The actor who played the live action Gomez Adams, he actually read it. Can't remember his name now. I bet your writing Raven could say who his name was. The original Gomez Adams. Who was that? In the black and white show. Yeah, there's his picture.
John Aston. John Aston.
Aston. Yes, Mr. Aston. That was my first time ever hearing the Raven read, was him reading it. I don't remember what it was for, but it was on TV. And I remember he did it. The legendary John Aston, yes. He was also in Tales from the Crypt, actually. He had a couple episodes in Tales from the Crypt. Love that actor. Wonderful man. Wonderful roles. Very memorable. boy, howdy, could he sell being crazy, right? But anyway, okay. I've been stalling enough, and actually we're way over time, which is funny because I was like, I only have 2 people to talk about tonight. Like, this is going to be the shortest episode ever. All right. This is Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of some one gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for evermore. Oh, that's a shame. Well, good night, Miss Raven. It was wonderful having you here. Tell Master I said hello. I'm not going to stop. I'm not giving up on this. I'm going to pull off reading the Raven. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with the fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," I said, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarcely was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more." Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token. And the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard the tapping, somewhere louder than before. "Surely," I said, "surely this is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what threat it is, and this mystery explore. Lay my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven, with the saintly days of yore. Not the least obscene made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mane of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon the bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore, though my chest be shorn and shaven, though, I said, "Art's sure not craven? Ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore, tell me what thou lordly name is on the night's Platonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marvelled, this ungainly fowl, to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevance bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing a bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the palsed bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken. Tara's leaving us too. Good night, Tara. Son of a... I lost my spot. Okay. Startled by the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken. Doubtless, I said, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmercifully disaster followed faster and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of nevermore. But the raven still beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled and cushioned seat in the front of the bird, and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore, meant by croaking nevermore. This I sat engaging in guessing, but not syllably expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining, that the lamp light gloated o'er, but whose velvet lining with the lamp light gloating o'er, she shall pass, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraph whose feet fell tinkled on the truffed floor. Wrench, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, and nepeth from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, O quaff this kind fiend, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, I said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilland? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, till this soul of sorrow laden, if within the distant Eden, I shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thou soul hast spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never fluttering, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamp lit o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. And that is the raven. You know how they say, like, if you read the book of Revelations, there's a blessing because it's, like, so long and intricate and, like, it's kind of a challenge? I feel like that's kind of the raven. Boy, howdy. First of all, real quick, people get mad at Lovecraft because he kind of fudged and made up words. Like, eldritch doesn't actually mean anything, even though today it does. But back when he wrote it, it didn't mean anything. I refuse to believe everything that I just read was actually English. Ugh. Whew. Was that as good for you? I know that's the second time I've made that joke. But in either case, yeah, wow, we're ticking late, aren't we? Real quick, I know that she already had to leave, but thank you to our guest, Riding Raven, in the chat. It was great having you here. Thanks, of course, to all of you for showing up. Oh, why am I suddenly now feeling kind of... Yeah, I started out tonight feeling absolutely just ornery and angry and stuff like that. Because it may have been the allergies, it might have been the medicine, I don't know. But now I feel the opposite. Now I'm like lethargic and I don't want to do or care about anything right now. I can't be mad right now. Of course, then again, to be fair, I mean, it's hard not to have a good time reading the works of Poe. It's funny, he's such a bleak writer. Such a bleak writer and such a sad person, supposedly. But there's a charm and a kind of fun to his writings, too. But anyway, we'll be back next week. Next week, we're going to be trying out some homemade pickles that my sister made. And you guys will just have to sit in suspense of what we're going to be talking about next week. But in the meantime, thank you. Yeah, I hope I did a good job. I hope I did justice to one of the greatest writers of all time. I know I didn't. But I'll see you guys all next week. And as always, keep checking the shadows.